The plant manager called my personal cell at 5:22 on a Thursday morning. No assistant, no scheduling email. Just him, voice cracking on the other end, like a man standing on the edge of something he couldn't climb back from. "What's it going to take, Martin?" That's what he said. I was 57 years old. 29 years at Caldwell Precision Parts. Never thought I'd hear a man like Gary Fontaine sound like that. Martin Webb. That's me. And I'm going to tell you how I made a plant manager beg from my kitchen table while my coffee was still hot. It started 6 weeks earlier. A Tuesday in February, fluorescent lights humming the way they always did in Conference Room C, the one with the busted blinds that nobody ever fixed. I'd been in that room 100 times. Budget reviews, safety audits, the occasional birthday cake for someone who'd been around long enough to matter. This time was different. Human Resources sent a woman I'd never met. Late 30s, blazer, laptop bag, the kind of calm that only comes from having this exact conversation too many times. She introduced herself as Renee. No last name. Just Renee. Said she was from corporate. Said it the way people say it when corporate is the point, when corporate is the wall you're not supposed to push back against. She opened a folder, slid a document across the table. "Workforce restructuring," she said. "Realignment of senior compensation tiers. The plant's Q3 numbers came in soft. Corporate's making adjustments across all facilities." I looked at the document. 2 pages. My name at the top. Effective date, March 31st. "That's 9 weeks from now," I said. She nodded. "You'd receive a severance package consistent with your tenure level." She pointed to a number at the bottom of the second page. It was less than half of what I'd been promised in the pension agreement I'd signed 8 years ago when the company restructured the first time. I looked at her. "What about my pension?" "Modified vesting," she said. "Because the separation is classified as a workforce reduction rather than a retirement, the standard pension terms don't apply. You'd receive the modified tier." I'd been there 29 years. I had started on the shop floor, running manual lathes. I had trained 3 generations of machinists. I had kept equipment running through 2 ownership changes, 1 plant fire, and a global parts shortage that almost shut us down for good in 2019. I had turned down 2 other offers in the past decade because the pension was the plan. That was the deal. That was why I stayed. I looked at the document again, looked at Renee. "I understand," I said. She seemed relieved. "Most people didn't make it easy." I took the document, folded it once, put it in my jacket pocket, walked back to the shop floor. The CNC bay was running at full capacity. 8 machines, all of them dialed in within tolerances. I'd spent 2 years calibrating. The sound was the same sound it had always been. Metal and precision and something close to order in a world that mostly wasn't. I knew every one of those machines, by serial number, by quirk, by the particular way each one warned you before something went wrong. 34 CNC machining centers across the facility. 4 coordinate measuring systems. The entire calibration and maintenance protocol. Mine. Not in the way that means ownership, but in the way that means nobody else knew it like I did. Nobody else had built the system from scratch when we transitioned from the old Bridgeport manual equipment back in 2009. Nobody else had negotiated the service agreement with Vantech Precision Systems when we signed the extended maintenance contract in 2018. Nobody else had read Vantech's contract carefully enough to notice Section 12, Attachment B, Paragraph 4. I had. I'd been 50 years old then, and I'd fought hard to get that language included. The regional director at the time, a decent man named Hargrove, had almost cut me loose during the automation push. Too expensive. Too old school. Doesn't understand lean manufacturing, according to the new operations consultant they'd brought in. I'd seen it coming. Spent 3 months working with Vantech's legal team directly, explaining the complexity of our calibration environment, the proprietary nature of our tolerance protocols. Got my name written into that contract in language that couldn't be worked around easily. In the event that the designated calibration authority, as identified in Attachment A, is no longer in active compensated employment status with the contracted facility, all maintenance certifications, calibration validation records, and proprietary tolerance protocols associated with this agreement shall be considered suspended pending recertification review, which shall require a minimum of 90 days and written reauthorization from the designated calibration authority or their certified successor. I had fought for every word of that paragraph. Now I sat at my workbench, looked at the document Renee had slid across the table, and thought about my daughter Claire's tuition. About the second surgery my wife Linda needed on her knee, the one our insurance would cover better once I hit full retirement status. About the pension I'd been promised. About 29 years. About how the new plant director, a 36-year-old named Derek Shaw, had been here 11 months, had never worked a day on a shop floor in his life, had an MBA from a school his family had certainly helped fund, and had spent his first 6 months at Caldwell restructuring the org chart, eliminating senior positions, and implementing a performance framework that coincidentally placed the highest tenured, highest compensated employees at the greatest risk. Not personal, Renee had said, just restructuring. Right. I went home that evening, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my copy of the Vantech contract. I'd kept a personal copy since the day it was signed. I read Section 12 again. Read it slowly. Read it the way you read something when you want to be absolutely certain you're remembering it correctly. I was remembering it correctly. I opened my email. Short message. 4 sentences. Sent it to Larry Greer, the company's head of legal, a man who had been at Caldwell almost as long as I had, and who I suspected did not particularly enjoy the direction things were going. Larry, wanted to flag something for your review. Realize the proposed separation timeline may have implications for the Vantech service agreement, specifically Section 12. Attachment B. Full contract attached for reference. Hit send. Then I drove to Home Depot. Bought a new set of router bits I'd been meaning to pick up for a woodworking project. Came home. Made dinner. Didn't say anything to Linda about the meeting yet. Just told her I'd had a long day. She knew. She always knew. But she gave me the space to work through things at my own pace. 26 years of marriage will teach a woman when to ask and when to wait. I didn't hear back from Larry that evening. Went to work the next day. Same as always, morning walk around, equipment checks. Reviewed the overnight production logs. Talked through a tolerance issue on machine 7 with the second shift operator who'd flagged it in the handover notes. Good kid. Paid attention to detail. Derek Shaw walked through the CNC bay around 10 in the morning. He did that sometimes. The walkthrough was performative. He didn't stop to ask questions. Didn't look at the equipment closely enough to see anything meaningful. Just walked and nodded and checked a box somewhere in his head that said he'd done a floor visit. He didn't look at me. That was fine. Larry called me at 2 in the afternoon, asked if I could stop by his office. I walked in. He was standing at his window looking out at the parking lot. He was 61 years old, had a way of going quiet when something was bothering him. You read that contract carefully, he said. I negotiated that contract, I said. I've been reading it carefully for 6 years. He turned around. He looked tired. Martin, I want to be straight with you. When Renee came in and presented the restructuring plan to Derek and HR, nobody ran it past legal for vendor contract implications. That's on us. What happens when the separation takes effect? I asked. He sat down. He already knew the answer. He was walking me through it for the same reason people confirm bad news they already know is bad. Because saying it out loud is different. Vantech's contract goes into suspension. The calibration certifications are frozen. The tolerance protocols you built. The proprietary configurations, the entire maintenance validation framework, all of it requires your sign-off, or the sign-off of a certified successor to remain active. There's no certified successor. You've been the sole designated authority for 6 years. How long to recertify someone else? Minimum 90 days. Realistically, with scheduling, Vantech's review process, and the complexity of our specific configuration, he paused. Probably closer to 5 months. I nodded. And the production line? He didn't answer right away. We run 40-hour maintenance certification audits every quarter. Next one scheduled for April. If you're gone by March 31st, and we can't produce current calibration documentation signed by the designated calibration authority, your equipment is running outside of certified parameters, I said. He closed his eyes briefly. Every aerospace part we produce, every medical equipment component, every defense contract component, those all require certified calibration records, I said. Every single one. I looked at him. Does Derek know? He does now. I stood up. Let me know if you need anything further from me, Larry. That was a Wednesday. On Friday, I came in, did my morning walk around, spent the afternoon rewriting documentation I'd been meaning to clean up for months. Complete, thorough, accurate documentation. Every calibration procedure, every tolerance parameter, every equipment-specific protocol. Put it all in a detailed internal file. Then I took a complete backup of every personal technical document I'd built over the years. Not proprietary Caldwell data, my own notes, my own methodology documents, the frameworks I'd developed, everything that lived in my head and in notebooks I'd kept in my own handwriting since 2009. I wasn't being vindictive. I was being organized. There's a difference, and it matters to me. The weekend I spent in my garage. Built a cabinet I'd been planning for months. Cedar, dovetail joints. Linda watched from the doorway at one point, coffee in hand. "You seem calm," she said. "I am calm," I said. She knows when I mean it. She nodded and went back inside. Monday morning, Derek called a department head meeting. I wasn't a department head, technically, but I was invited. Conference room C again. He stood at the front of the room with a slide deck and the slightly elevated energy of a man who thinks he's winning. He went through production targets, cost reduction initiatives, the restructuring timeline. At one point he said senior resources needed to be right-sized to reflect where the company is going, not where it's been. I wrote that down in my notebook. Verbatim. Senior resources. After the meeting, Derek stopped me in the hallway. His version of a private conversation. "Martin, you're handling this professionally. I appreciate that." I looked at him. "Just doing my job," I said. He nodded. Moved on, already done with the conversation. Not personal, I thought. Right. The following week, Vantech sent their quarterly pre-audit questionnaire. Standard process. One of the questions asked for confirmation that the designated calibration authority named in the contract was still in active employment status. I answered it accurately. Martin Webb. Active compensated status. Pending change effective March 31st. Sent it back to Vantech's compliance coordinator. CC'd Larry. That was the moment it became real to people who hadn't been paying close enough attention. Larry forwarded it to Derek within the hour. Derek called a meeting with the executive team that afternoon. I wasn't in that meeting. Didn't need to be. I could see the faces through the conference room glass. The operations VP scrolling through something on his laptop, with the expression of a man reading news he doesn't want to be reading. The CFO asking questions. Derek standing at the whiteboard with a marker, drawing diagrams, talking fast. Patricia, the quality director, who had been at Caldwell 12 years and had a way of seeing through performance to substance, sat at the table with her arms crossed and said nothing. She glanced through the glass once, made eye contact with me. She looked the way people look when they saw something predictable happen and are too tired to say, "I told you so." I went back to my workbench. Derek came to see me the next morning. He had that careful energy of someone who has been advised by legal to be careful. "Martin, I want to talk about the transition timeline." He sat down across from me. "We may have more flexibility than initially indicated. Would you be open to discussing a modified arrangement?" "What kind of arrangement?" I said. "Something that works for both sides. His timeline, his terms." That was the subtext. I looked at him for a moment. "Derek, you told me last Tuesday that senior resources needed to be right-sized to reflect where the company is going. I'm a senior resource. I've been right-sized. The timeline is March 31st. I don't see why that would change." He smiled. It came out the wrong shape. "You're a valuable member of this team, Martin. We don't want to lose your expertise." 29 years, I said. My pension terms were in writing. "The modification you're proposing represents a significant reduction in what I was contractually promised." He started to respond. "I'm happy to have my attorney review any revised offer," I said. "That's the appropriate way to handle it." He left. I went home, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. My attorney and I had been in contact since the week after Renee's meeting. Not because I planned to do anything dramatic, because I'd spent 29 years in manufacturing, and I knew the difference between a machine that's running fine and a machine that's running fine until it isn't. I believed in preparation. The proposal had been drafted for 2 weeks. Subject line, separation terms and Vantech contract resolution. 3 items. Full restoration of promised pension benefits under the original vesting terms. Lump sum compensation for the modified terms I'd been presented, plus a breach penalty reflecting the Vantech contract exposure. A consulting agreement at my rate, my hours, for the transition period. Total, 583. 0. I forwarded it to Larry, copied my attorney, went to bed. The next 3 days I worked normally. Finished documentation, trained a junior technician on a calibration procedure I'd been meaning to pass down for months. Good kid. Listened well. I made sure he understood why each step mattered, not just what each step was. That kind of teaching takes time, but it's the only kind that holds. Derek did not respond to the proposal. He sent it to corporate instead. That was fine. Corporate had better resources for understanding the full scope of the Vantech situation. On Monday morning of the following week, Vantech sent a formal notice. They had received a flag from their compliance system indicating a change in the designated calibration authority status. Per Section 12, Attachment B, Paragraph 4 of the service agreement, they were initiating a suspension review of all active maintenance certifications pending reauthorization. One paragraph from a vendor compliance department. That's all it took. By 9 a.m., the quality director received notification that 3 pending shipments were flagged for certification hold. Aerospace components, tight tolerances, tighter deadlines. The customers on those orders did not accept delays gracefully. By 10, the operations VP was in Larry's office. I could see them through the glass. By 11, the CFO had been looped in. He was a careful man. Careful men go quiet when they understand the scope of something. He went very quiet. The plant floor kept running. Equipment humming, people working. From the outside, nothing had changed, but every certification that kept those parts qualified for shipment was now suspended, pending a review that required my authorization. Parts sitting in finished goods inventory, ready to ship, worth months of production, frozen in a compliance gray zone that no one at Caldwell had the authority to resolve, except me. Derek tried to spin it internally, sent a message to the department heads about a vendor administrative issue being resolved. Routine compliance matter. Expect resolution shortly. The quality director replied to all. Her message was 2 sentences. This is not a vendor administrative issue. This is a contract breach triggered by a personnel decision. Please advise on escalation path. That's when the floor understood. I was at my workbench when the HR manager, a young man named Theo, who had been at the company 8 months and looked like he'd slept badly for a week, came to find me. He had the body language of a man who'd drawn the short straw. "Mr. Webb," he said. He actually called me Mr. Webb. He was nervous enough to be formal. "I understand you've submitted a proposal through legal. Is there any possibility you'd be willing to discuss interim options while corporate reviews the situation?" I looked up from what I was doing. "Theo," I said, "the proposal is the discussion. There's nothing interim about it." He nodded too fast. "Of course. I'll communicate that." He walked away. I watched him go. Then I turned back to my work and finished what I was doing. Even tone, no anger, just cold clarity. The kind that comes from watching people fail upward for 3 decades, while the people who actually kept the machines running were called senior resources. An hour later, corporate sent a man named Phillips, director of operations for the region. Flew in same day, which told you everything about how corporate viewed the situation. He came to my workbench himself. No assistant, no scheduling, just him, Martin. He sat down across from me like we were old colleagues. He might have been 50, the kind of fit that signals someone who manages stress through discipline. I'd seen the type before, capable, transactional, respected the leverage once he understood it. "You've created a significant situation here," he said. "I haven't created anything," I said. "I negotiated a contract. I was accurate on a compliance form. The situation was created when someone modified my pension terms without accounting for the vendor agreement." He nodded slowly. "Fair point." He paused. "The number in your proposal is accurate," I said. "My attorney calculated it based on the pension differential, standard breach penalties in the service industry, and a consulting rate consistent with my expertise level. It's a large number. Recertifying someone to replace me is a 5-month process," I said, "during which your aerospace and defense shipments are in certification hold. Your quarterly numbers for Q2 look the way they're going to look during those 5 months. I didn't calculate the exposure, but your CFO has. You can ask him what number he came up with." Phillips looked at me for a moment. He wasn't a bad man. He was a man doing his job in a system that had made a mistake. "If we move forward with your terms," he said, "how quickly can the certifications be restored?" "I talked with Vantech's compliance coordinator yesterday," I said. "If the employment and compensation terms are confirmed, reinstatement takes 48 hours. I walk them through the reauthorization process personally. You're shipping by Friday." He nodded, sat back. "One more thing, the consulting arrangement. You'd be willing to do that? On my terms. My schedule, my rate. I train a successor properly, not on a rushed timeline. And Derek Scholl has no involvement in the engagement. I work with Phillips directly and with the quality director." He didn't flinch at that last part, which told me he'd already had some version of the Derek conversation. "Give me until tomorrow morning," he said. "You have until 5 p.m. today," I said. "The proposal has a response window. My attorney was clear about that." He looked at me, slight nod. "Understood." He stood up, extended his hand. I shook it. That much was appropriate. This wasn't about theater. It was about resolution. He walked out of the bay. I went back to my calibration notes. I spent the afternoon at the coffee shop 2 blocks from the plant. Good coffee. A table by the window. Read the paper. Watched people on the sidewalk going about their regular Wednesday afternoon, none of them knowing anything. My attorney called at 2:15. They're negotiating, he said. Phillips called me directly. They're pushing back on the breach penalty portion. It stands, I said. That's what I told him. At 3:40, my attorney called again. Wire instructions, he said. Pension restoration, breach compensation, consulting retainer. Full amount. 48 hours from when I send confirmation to Vantech, I said. They understand. I walked him through it. They're not happy, but they understand. I folded the newspaper. Sat there for a moment. The woman at the next table was reading a novel. A couple near the window were laughing about something. Ordinary afternoon, nobody knowing that somewhere in a plant 2 blocks away, a decision that had been made about a senior resource had cost $583,000 because someone didn't read a contract. At 4:18, my phone pinged. Bank notification, wire transfer received. I sat there looking at it for a long time. Linda was making dinner when I got home. She looked at me when I walked in. She has always been able to read me better than any document. It's done, I said. She set down the spoon, looked at me carefully. The money? All of it. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she came over and put her hand on my arm. How do you feel? That was the question, wasn't it? I thought about 29 years, about showing up before anyone else arrived and leaving after most people had gone home, about the night I slept on a cot in the maintenance bay because a machine malfunction had us on a deadline and I wasn't going to let someone else carry that, about watching Derek Scholl walk through the facility like he was inspecting a rental property, touching nothing, understanding nothing, deciding everything. Tired, I said, mostly just tired. She squeezed my arm, then sit down. Dinner's in 20 minutes. I sat down, fed the dog, watched the yard through the back window. The light was going flat the way it does in late February. The phone rang at 5:22 the next morning. That was Gary Fontaine, the plant manager. He and I had known each other for 15 years. He was a decent man who had gotten caught between corporate pressure and a situation he hadn't caused. I didn't hold it against him. Martin, he said. He sounded exhausted. I've got the shipment hold situation, the certifications. I need to know you're going to make the call to Vantech. The money cleared, I said. I'll contact Vantech this morning. 48 hours, like I said. He exhaled slowly. Thank you. I'm not doing you a favor, Gary, I said. I'm honoring an agreement, the same thing I always did. He was quiet for a moment. I know, he said. And Martin, for what it's worth, the way this went, it wasn't right. No, I said. It wasn't. But it's resolved. I called Vantech at 8. Walked the compliance coordinator through the reauthorization process, confirmed my employment status, the compensation terms, the continuity of the designated authority. She was thorough and professional. We went through every certification category. 41 minutes on the phone. At the end, she said, Mr. Webb, your records show you've been the calibration authority at this facility for 6 years. You've never had a compliance gap before this. That's right, I said. For whatever it's worth, she said, professionally speaking, the systems you build here are among the cleanest we service. I appreciated that more than I expected to. 2 days later, I drove to the plant, not to my old workbench, to the conference room where I'd agreed to begin the transition process. Phillips was there. The quality director was there. A senior technician named Roy, who I'd worked alongside for 11 years, who was going to be the successor candidate if he was willing, and my attorney on screen. Roy looked at me when I walked in, slight grin. Heard you had a quiet couple of weeks, he said. Something like that, I said. We spent 4 hours going through the initial framework, the scope of the certification process, the timeline, what Roy would need to learn, and in what sequence. He was a good technician, careful, didn't cut corners, the kind of man who asked why before he asked how, which is the only way to actually understand a system instead of just operating it. Before we wrapped up, the quality director pulled me aside. Your name, she said, is going to be in the certification documentation going forward. Foundational Calibration Authority. Every record, every audit trail, it'll show you as the person who built the framework. I looked at her. That wasn't part of the agreement. No, she said. That was my decision. You built this. The record should say, you built it. I nodded. Thank you. She shook her head slightly. It's just accurate. I thought about that on the drive home. Accurate. That was the right word for it. Derek Shaw was reassigned 6 weeks later. Strategic Development Consultant, they called it. New title, no team, no plant access. His father, who sat on the board of one of Caldwell's parent companies, had enough influence to keep him employed, not enough to keep him in a position where he could make these kinds of decisions again. Heard he was applying elsewhere. Good luck with that. The story spread the way these things spread. Engineering forums, LinkedIn. A trade publication ran a short piece about the Vantech case in a column about contract risk management in manufacturing. They didn't use my name. They didn't need to. People in the industry who knew the players figured it out. I got calls, other engineers, other facilities, people who'd been in similar positions, who had read their own vendor agreements more carefully after hearing the story secondhand. A few asking if I'd consult on their situations. I take the interesting ones. 3 months after the settlement, I took Claire out for breakfast. She's 23, finishing her last year of grad school. Civil engineering. Sharp in a way that still surprises me sometimes, even though it shouldn't. She'd been watching me her whole life. She knew how to pay attention. "Dad," she said, over her eggs. "Mom told me what happened. The pension thing. What you did." I shrugged. It worked out. She gave me the look her mother gives me. The one that means don't downplay it. "You planned it," she said. "You didn't just react. You planned it 3 years ago. 6 years ago, actually," I said. When I negotiated the contract, she was quiet for a moment, poured more coffee. She's always been a thinker, my daughter. Turns things over before she speaks. "Did you know you'd ever have to use it?" she asked. "Hoped I wouldn't," I said. "But you work somewhere long enough. You learn to read the direction things are going. You protect yourself, or you rely on the hope that people will treat you fairly, and people are capable of being fair. But institutions are under pressure, and pressure changes what people do. That's kind of a dark lesson," she said. "It's an honest one," I said. She nodded slowly. "So what do I do with it?" I thought about that. About 30 years of shop floors and calibration logs and equipment that rewarded patience and punished shortcuts. About contracts and fine print, and the particular kind of respect you earn when you understand your own value clearly enough to protect it. "Know what you've built," I said. Not in a way that makes you difficult to work with, in a way that means you can make clear what it would cost to lose it. Get it in writing when it matters. Read what you sign. And if someone tells you you're replaceable, ask yourself whether they've actually thought through what replacing you would require. She grinned. "And if they haven't, make sure you have the contract to prove it," I said. She laughed. Real laugh. The kind that makes the whole morning feel like it was worth getting up for. We finished breakfast. I paid. She drove back to campus. I drove to the hardware store, then home, then out to the garage. I've been building a workbench. Proper one, this time. White oak. Heavy enough to last the rest of my life and probably someone else's after that. The kind of thing you make when you have time to make it right. Linda came out around noon, stood in the doorway, coffee in hand. The way she does. "You're happy out here," she said. Not a question. "I am," I said. She smiled, went back inside. I kept working. These days I consult 2 afternoons a week. Roy is progressing well. Another 4 months and he'll be ready to carry the certification authority on his own. Good technician. I've made sure his contract with Vantech is written correctly. His name where it needs to be. Language that protects him the way mine protected me. Patricia saw to the documentation on Caldwell's end. She's thorough. She told me she'd been auditing every senior vendor agreement at the facility since February. Found 3 others worth reviewing, she said. I told her I was available if she needed a second set of eyes. What I've learned in 30 years of keeping machines running is that most things fail quietly before they fail loudly. A tolerance that drifts by 0.005 of an inch over 6 months. A vibration pattern that shows up only under load. A calibration that's technically within spec, but moving toward the edge. You catch it early if you're paying attention. You don't catch it at all if you're not. Companies work the same way. Loyalty drifts. Promises get reclassified. Senior resources get right-sized. You can be surprised by it, or you can be prepared for it. I chose prepared. I'm fishing more than I have in years. Took Linda to the coast last month. First real vacation in a long time. We sat on the beach for 3 days and didn't talk about work once. Claire called while we were there, just checking in. We talked for 20 minutes about her thesis project, a load-bearing bridge design for a rural county in the Midwest. She'd caught a miscalculation in the soil compaction assumptions that would have caused problems down the line. Her advisor hadn't caught it. She had. I told her I was proud of her. She said, I learned from the best. I didn't say anything for a moment, just looked out at the water. Yeah, I said. You did. Sat there for a while after we hung up, thinking about what it means to build something that lasts. A machine calibrated correctly, a contract written carefully, a daughter who knows the difference between being underestimated and being defeated. None of those things are the same as revenge. Revenge is for people who need the other person to lose. What I needed was simpler. I needed the record to be accurate. I needed what was promised to be honored. I needed the work I'd spent 30 years doing to be counted as what it was. The $583,000 made it count. But the bench I'm building in the garage, that counts too. And Claire's bridge project. And Roy learning the calibration system properly. And the fact that somewhere in Caldwell's vendor documentation, the baseline for every machining certification at that facility traces back to a methodology I built by hand, tested under pressure, and protected when someone decided it wasn't worth protecting. My name is in the records where it belongs. After everything, after 29 years and a Tuesday meeting with a woman named Renee and a 36-year-old director who said senior resource.
Some days feel off, like I'm standing but still falling. A little pain, a little tired, and no one to tell it all to. There are days that feel unsteady, like I'm drifting out of place. Every step just feels so heavy, with a smile I have to fake. A little hurt I keep inside me, a little weight I always hide, and 1,000 quiet worries I've been holding deep inside. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. I keep walking through the silence like it's all I've ever known. Every crowded room reminds me how it feels to be alone. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. Maybe one day I'll be stronger, maybe I'll learn how to speak, but for now I keep it buried in the parts of me too weak. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly Don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection. Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. Begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone